If you love liberty, declare your independence by signing the Shire Society Declaration at shiresociety.com.
Good morning, everybody. It's 10:02. The convention was scheduled to begin 2 minutes ago, which is not entirely horrible for Libertarian Standard Time to be only 2 minutes late. So welcome to the 2018 Libertarian Convention, where this is much larger than what the convention was last year as far as total registrants. I'm not sure what our total check-ins are so far. You will see in your fairly large convention book on what is officially page 2 a proposed agenda. Before we begin, I do have one modification to make to the agenda, that the 1:30 scheduled reconvene with LNC Vice Chair debate, that be moved to 4:30, and the Liberty Award presentation be moved to 1:30. Are there any other proposed modifications to the agenda before we adopt this? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Is it seconded?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any objection? Hearing no objection, the agenda has been adopted. Next, we have the adoption of special rules. Chip, if you could come make that presentation, please. And you will find on page 1 there is a table of contents. The special rules to consider is page 29, which unfortunately, due to the way that we had to print this, that page is not numbered, but it is right in the middle where these staples are. So if you just open it directly in the middle.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Constitution, Bylaws, and Rules Committee, we move that the following convention rules be adopted by the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire and remain in effect for all conventions of the party until otherwise noted. These convention rules that are in your booklet, as mentioned on page 29, are here basically to set guidelines for us to basically govern our conventions. They include such things as time limits, so that we don't have people speaking excessively or anything like that, and that we actually do keep to a good schedule. And they also include election methods and other things like that. So please take some time to look them over, and we can go ahead and propose amendments or anything like that if you would like.
Any questions?
Yep.
Question?
Is this the same convention rules that were sent out a week or two ago, the proposal?
Yes.
Thank you.
And all of the amendments and the platform committee report, bylaws committee report as sent out are what's in the book.
Or it could just be considered part of the proposed rules. The motion.
Is there any discussion regarding these proposed rules at this time? Well, let me just ask it this way. Is there any objection to accepting these rules as the convention rules for the party? All right. Convention rules are adopted. We will go ahead and move on to the next part, which is, I believe, 6 or 7 pages after that. So actually just a few. You'll find a section titled Special Rules of Order. This is not a convention rule simply because it does not apply to the convention. It applies to membership specifically. And this is a motion presented by the Constitution, Bylaws, and Rules Committee. We move that the following special rule of order be adopted by the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire and remain in effect for all conventions or remain in effect until otherwise amended. Essentially, what this proposed rule is this is a grace period rule regarding membership, so that if somebody misses paying their membership dues by a few days and then pays it later on, they are still considered an active member in good standing, even during that small period where they've missed their dues. It gives them a grace period. Is there any discussion regarding this proposed rule? Go.
I just want to explain why we made this proposal, because a couple of the things specifically dealing with delegates say a member in good standing for a certain number of days, but the term in good standing was not defined. So this is an attempt to define that while also building in a grace period, because we did have somebody who missed renewing by 2 days. Who had otherwise been a member in good standing for well over a year, and we wanted to make sure that that person would still be able to vote as a member of the party.
Is there any further discussion on this proposed rule? Hearing none, is there any objection to accepting this proposed rule? So moved.
The next item on the agenda is officer reports, and before we go through those, I want to remind everyone that if you look all the way to the far side of the room, you will see several tables with various things on them. That is the silent auction table. Please, at some point during the day, go over, take a look at all of the wonderful things that we have on the silent auction table and silently bid on them. If you noisily bid, then that would be violating the rules of silent auction. We also have raffle tickets, 50-50 raffle. Stop by the registration table for those. We also have some t-shirts and various books that make a donation. You get a t-shirt or a book. And want to thank our wonderful sponsors. Bronze sponsor, we have Joe Hoffman for LNC Vice Chair, the Omaha Unconvention, which they actually have a table. You can find out about that convention. I will be a speaker at that convention coming up Memorial Day weekend. In the back of the room, we have the Secular Coalition for America. As a silver sponsor, we have Liberty Lobby LLC and Free Keene. Free Keene is providing the audio and video recording for us. And gold sponsors, we have Justin O'Donnell for Congress, Gilletta Jarvis for NH, Darlene Lester and Kenny Kelly, and Caleb and Mitch Dyer. You might recognize the name Caleb Dyer. He is one of our 3 state representatives elected as, well, serving as a Libertarian. So just give all of the sponsors a big round of applause. So we'll begin the officer reports with the chair report, where I jotted down some notes this morning. As I mentioned, the Libertarian Party conventions continue to grow. January of 2016, we had 11 people sitting around a single table in Area 23, right down the road. Last year's convention, we had 50 attendees to the convention. This year, we have 52 registered delegates for the state convention, with a total of 67 total registrants, and I noticed a couple of walk-ins as well. So I think it's very likely we're going to hit 75 people at the convention today. And despite the growth, and despite having ballot access, we're still facing some hurdles in New Hampshire, mainly the New Hampshire legislature that doesn't want to ease ballot access, largely because the Secretary of State doesn't want to ease ballot access because he's under the delusion that if you make it easier for people to run as something other than a Republican or a Democrat, we'll have ballots that are 5 pages long because of all these party columns. Even though the Secretary of State also opposes amending the form of the ballot so that we don't have columns for every party. And I find it ironic that the Secretary of State doesn't like having multiple choices when before the presidential primary he goes through the FEC filings and calls up people and asks them for $1,000 to list them on the Republican and Democratic presidential primary ballot. So choice is good, except for in November when you have choices other than Republican and Democrat. I see Representative Dyer laughing, probably because he can recall all of the hearings where he had introduced several different bills to ease ballot access, and there were all of these objections of, well, we can't just make it easier for our competition. But there has been some success in the legislature where Representative Finney, who I don't necessarily see off the top of my head, but I believe he will be here. He can talk about some of the bills that he has introduced that have passed both the House and the Senate and are working their way to Governor Sununu's desk. The legislature also wound up repealing the death penalty, and that bill is going to the governor. Unfortunately, he has vowed to veto the bill, so if everybody could very kindly reach out to Governor Sununu asking him to reconsider his position, I would be ever so grateful. We have a very busy day ahead of us, and as I mentioned, we do have an LNC Vice Chair debate coming up later in the day. If you have questions, we do have a box O questions that is labeled as such. So please fill out a little slip of paper with your questions for the Vice Chair candidates, put it in the box O questions. And next up, since Brian McQuaid is sitting right next to me, he will give a membership report and also tell us how many delegates we currently have.
Yes, hello. So a quick note, the last report we received from LP National shows that there are 179 LP National members from New Hampshire. Currently, we have 124 LPNH members. That's a 23% increase from last year when we had 101. And a 100%, we've doubled our membership since this executive committee took over in late 2016. I do quickly want to recognize some of our lifetime members that are here: Darryl Perry, John and Rosalie Babiars, and Ian Freeman. And if I miss anyone else, please let me know.
Bernie.
So Bernie Gracie over there. Thank you. So a quick note on our affiliates. So last year at our convention, we had 2 affiliates prior to the convention. One of our goals has been to cover the state with affiliates. It hasn't been easy. Southern New Hampshire LP joined LP Western and LP Seacoast to become an official affiliate with LPNH last year. Tonight, and under new business, we look to add the Upper Valley LP. That includes Grafton County below the notch and Sullivan County. The LP Lakes region was formed last year, but we are looking for for new leadership to take that over. It's kind of stagnant right now, so anyone in Belknap or Carroll that's interested, please let us know. And there is an informal group in the North Country as well, so let us know if you're interested. I do a quick county breakdown every meeting we have, so I will do the same thing here. We have 5 members in Belknap, 3 in Carroll, 10 in Cheshire, 2 in Coos. I'm happy about that because we didn't have anyone in Coos last year. 8 in Grafton, 43 in Hillsborough, 10 in Merrimack, 21 in Rockingham, 13 in Stratford, 4 in Sullivan, and we have 5 out-of-state members. And for credentialing today, my last note is we have 37 delegates here, and that would be 33 for a 7/8 vote, 28 for a 3/4 vote, 25 for a 2/3 vote, 19 for a simple majority, and I'll update as any new members come in. So, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Tom, we have a treasurer report, and while Tom is working his way up here, if you are not yet a member of the National Party, you will see on the tables in front of you membership forms for the National Party. Karen Ann Harlows, who is our banquet speaker, she will be here at some point. And I believe she has t-shirts for those national members, or Justin O'Donnell, who is our region rep, might also have the t-shirts, because I know there was some debate about which members of the LNC are allowed to get t-shirts at what event.
All right, good morning, everyone. With the growth in membership, also occasionally does come a little bit of a growth in the treasury. We've also been you know, as tight as we can as far as controlling expenses and things like that. So this is a report as of now, which does not include like outpayments for today's event and things. So these numbers will definitely be lesser by end of day. Current bank balances stand at $11,352.92. About $216 in petty cash, and digital currencies totaling $5,364.28. Total balances standing at $16,717.20. We do have some assorted metal coins, silvers, coppers, things like that that stand in holding. In the past month, we had incomes from memberships and conventions, donations, etc., totaling $1,690.32. We had expenses outlaying of mostly convention expenses and PayPal fees, $1,528.09. Net positive change of $162.23. Questions? Nope. Thank you very much.
And Gilletta, I'm not sure if there's a secretary report, or if you want to give, aren't you the chair of the candidate recruitment committee, if you've got any notes on candidates that have announced that they're running for various offices? No. Okay. And vice chair generally does not have a report on anything unless I'm mistaken on something.
You're good.
So next on the agenda is the platform that technically is scheduled to start in 10 minutes, but since we're not the New Hampshire legislature, we can actually begin things a couple minutes early. I forget who was the chair of that platform committee, but I see him making his way up here right now, and you will notice a big giant screen here. There is a little bit of miscommunication about projector. The hotel is looking to see if they have a projector, which if they do, that will be wonderful for us, because then we can actually project modifications up onto that. Otherwise, please turn into your books to page 15. Again, that page is not numbered, but it is right next to the Jarvis for Governor ad,
page 14.
Which is on page 14. You will also notice the platform as it currently exists is on page 5. So Justin, come up for that report.
Good morning, everybody.
One thing. Before he begins, could I get a volunteer that is not an LPNH member to be timekeeper for us? And I know we have a couple of those people. Excellent. Alex, if you could come sit up close somewhere, and the rules on time are those proposed convention rules that we adopted, again, right there in the middle of the book.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Justin O'Donnell. I am the LNC Region 8 representative. I also had the pleasure of serving as chair of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire's platform committee this year. We gathered together the 5 members of the committee, several online discussions, and we did have an in-person meeting down in Manchester where we went over and hashed out a number of proposed changes to the platform. Last year, this body struck the old platform in its entirety and adopted a brand new platform from scratch, which gave us a phenomenal template to work from. We had a platform that was expansive, very principled, and covered most of what we had wanted to see, and there wasn't many changes we needed to make. There's only a few planks we added entirely new, and several minor amendments to existing planks, and just a few major amendments. The other members of the platform committee I would like to thank briefly was Representative Caleb Dyer, Representative Brandon Finney, Spencer Dias, and Stephen Nass, who also joined me on the committee. In total, we had 18 proposed changes. Many of them are very minor. I'd hope they go over very quickly. They were sent out earlier for everyone to review, and they were posted online as well. All except one were adopted with a unanimous vote from the platform committee for recommendation, and are put to you for your vote on whether or not to amend the platform as it is. Thank you.
We have a change in our delegate total.
So we currently now have 38 delegates, and that's 34 for 7/8 vote, 29 for 3/4, 26 for 2/3, and 20 for a simple. Okay.
Thank you. So we will go through the platform committee report as far as the changes in the order that you see them in the book. So the first proposal is the change civil rights to natural rights, change inalienable to unalienable, strike the words governmental entity, individual, or corporation, and change that to individual, group, or government. And then amends the final sentence to say, we believe that all people are endowed with such inherent natural rights regardless of age, sex, gender, orientation, race, nationality, creed, or religion, and strikes the final sentence. So that's the proposal made by the platform committee. Is there discussion? Mr. Dyer, yes.
Just to clarify, the reason for changing civil rights to natural rights was to delineate, as per our principles or statement of principles, that we believe that rights are natural, not constructions of the state. And that is the principal reason for this proposal.
Thank you. And you will also see below all of the proposals from the platform committee, there is a committee report. So that's the proposal on the floor. Is there further discussion? Yes, Andrew.
I'm curious as to the change from inalienable to unalienable.
Yes.
If a member of the platform committee wants to come up here to answer questions.
And while Caleb's coming up here, we now have 39 delegates, so 35 for 7/8, 30 for 3/4, 26 still for 2/3, and 20 for simple.
So to clarify for Mr. Olding, the change from inalienable to unalienable is actually a very slight legal discrepancy. The two are actually defined differently in the law. One is in reference to certain things that which in some instances may actually be alienated from an individual, whereas unalienable references things that which can never be by their nature alienated. In this case, we felt it was appropriate to use unalienable, as certain rights, at least the ones that we are detailing here, cannot be transferred. They are non-transferable. Thank you.
And just one point of order information, if you will. When you're recognized, please state your name. That way our secretary can keep that in the record. And we have another change to our delegate count, where we now have 40 delegates. Mr. McQuaid will give us the breakdowns of simple majority, 2/3, etc. In just a moment. But while he calculates that, is there further discussion on this proposal? Seeing none, the motion has been made by the platform committee. Is it seconded?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Somebody remind me the requisite number of votes for amending the platform?
Simple.
No, so that's more changes 2/3, I believe. Okay. 2/3 votes, based on the current constitution, so.
And as Darrell said, we now have 40 delegates, and I believe that's the most delegates we've ever had. 7/8 is 36, 3/4 is 30, 2/3 is 27, simple is 21.
We're confirming the...
Yeah, we're double checking to see what the vote is required for amending the platform.
Darrell, just ask if there's any objection.
Yeah.
Maybe no objection.
You can do that.
Yeah.
Is there any objection to this proposal? Hearing none, amendment PA-01-18 is adopted. The next proposal put forth by the platform committee is PA-02-18 that adds a plank. Mr. Dyer, if you want to explain what the addition is.
Yep. So this particular proposal adds a plank on self-ownership, basically recognizing again per our statement of principles that an individual owns themselves and is sovereign in that, to that effect. I believe the wording will be to everyone's liking. I hope there is no objection, but please raise it if there is.
Is there any discussion on Platform Amendment 2 to add a self-ownership plank? Seeing none, it's been moved by the committee. Is it seconded?
Darrell, technically you don't need a second from the committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Is there objection to adopting this plank? It appears that there is objection. Would you like to speak?
Stuart Light from Berlin. I'd like to change "or" towards the end, without just cause or due process. I'd like that to be without just cause and due process.
All right, I'm being informed that since discussion was already ended and we're on the voting period, amendments would be out of order at this time. But it does appear that there's objection to passing this, so we will have a vote. Everyone who is a delegate should have in their possession a card that says voter card. So all in favor of adopting Platform Amendment 2, please raise your voter card. All opposed? It passes. Next we have Platform Amendment 3 to add a plank on voluntary action.
Oh, that's great. The plank that we authored concerning voluntary action was really just, again, another effectuation of our statement of principles, except this one is much more obviously tailored to Miesians. It's using effectively parts of human action as its basis, which I thought was important to include. But it fundamentally states that we believe that all interactions between individuals ought to be voluntary and free of coercion. I don't think that's a very controversial opinion in this room. Again, if there's any objection, please raise it.
Is there any discussion on this proposal? Yes, Mr. Olding.
Yeah, so Andrew Olding, sorry I didn't say my name last time. So the phrase lawful consensual activity, I'm confused as to why we would include the term lawful. I understand that we are a society of laws, but consensual activity being, you know, what we as libertarians stand for, it feels that we shouldn't, it feels that we should delineate right and wrong on ethical basis and not on the law. and I am confused as to why the term lawful is included.
The term lawful is included is because fundamentally we are a party that is involved in affecting governments. So we must be conscientious of law. We opted to use the term lawful instead of legal because, of course, legal has pertinence to statute as opposed to actual case law and other such principles upon which we operate. I would call, in our case, our law is similar or very much intertwined with our principles. So I feel that the term lawful in this case, while it may have some connotations to statism and the institution thereof, I believe that the inclusion of lawful is fundamental to our purpose as an organization.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, is there objection to adopting Platform Amendment 3? There is objection. Would you like to speak to the objection or no?
No, it would echo.
Yeah. All in favor of adopting Platform Amendment 3, please raise your yellow card. All opposed? It passes. Next we have Platform Amendment 4 that makes slight modification to the self-defense plank, where you can see the modifications. Mr. Dyer, if you would like to, since you're the one that wrote the committee report, speak to the amendment.
This is self-defense, correct?
Yes.
So we made a couple of changes to this particular plank. We did not believe that we should be taking a position on existing doctrine in law or specifically stand your ground laws and such. We thought that was inappropriate. We felt that basically the platform should be an instrument of our principle. So I'll read it in its entirety as it would be amended just for the benefit of the body. We support every individual's right to self-defense and by extension the right to keep and bear arms. We believe that every person may exercise their right to self-defense wherever they have a right to be. We reject all laws at any level of government restricting, registering, or monitoring the ownership, manufacture, modification, transport, or transfer of any item, tool, or accessory that may be used for self-defense. We felt that that was very, very clear language. There was one thing that the committee did not, or sort of overlooked, was the addition of the word prohibition in the section where it says government restricting, registering, or monitoring. Adding the word prohibition might be in order, and I would certainly accept that as a friendly amendment.
Technically friendly, and I know that Mr. Spangler is going to point out technically friendly amendments are not allowed per Roberts, even though basically every libertarian organization allows for them. They're technically not allowed in accordance with the rules of order that our governing document says that we're supposed to be bound to, even though I wish the term Robert's Rules of Order would be forever thrown away out of libertarian verbiage. With that, we do have another update to our delegate count.
Oh. Yay!
41 delegates, 36 for 7/8, 31 for 3/4, 28 for 2/3, and 21 for 7.
So there has been an amendment from the committee. Mr. Dyer, would you like to formally move to amend the proposal or not?
Yes, I will move. I move to amend the proposal to read as follows. We reject all laws at any level of government prohibiting, restricting, registering, or monitoring the ownership. So there is an addition of prohibiting and a comma.
That does require 2/3 majority. That has been moved and seconded by Mr. O'Donnell. Is there discussion on the amendment or the proposal with the amendment? Yes.
I guess this would be directed technically to the chair or Mr. Dyer. Last I checked, restricting included prohibiting. So isn't that sort of a redundancy? I understand why it's there, but it does seem to be redundant
I would tend to agree. I believe that they are kind of inextricably linked. However, there is definitely a difference. Restriction, so a prohibition is a type of restriction, but it is a very specific type of restriction, that which is to the perhaps most extreme degree. So delineating between prohibitions and restrictions, I believe, is useful in our platform as it leaves no uncertainty. That is all.
So it has been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor of the amendment to Platform Proposal 3? All of those opposed? The amendment appears to pass. Is there further discussion on the proposal as amended? Yes.
Again, I would like to motion that where inalienable is struck out, we just add that word from the last one, or a couple ago, the unalienable terminology, just to remain consistent with how we've been in the other parts of our platform.
Point of order.
There's a point of order.
I don't believe amendments are allowed at this, before the up-down vote.
It was already amended once. It can still be amended.
It was amended by the board.
We voted on the amendment. We have not voted on the plank as amended. We are still on discussion. So the amendment to where the word inalienable has been stricken to reinsert the word unalienable.
The reason why the word inalienable was stricken from this platform plank is because the right to self-defense is actually unique. It is actually an alienable right. You can alienate your right to defense to someone else. So I could say contract with Daryl here to defend me for a given period of time, or whatever. So it is an actual alienable right. So we felt that it was inappropriate to call something that which is alienable inalienable. Even though technically speaking inalienable would work here, because legally speaking it has a different connotation than unalienable and so forth, we felt that it was better to not include the word than to include it in this case. It was a point of contention, by the way, on the committee, but we ultimately decided to drop the word.
So there has been a motion. Is that seconded?
Nope.
I am not seeing a second, so the proposal dies for a lack of a second. Is there further discussion or amendment? Yes, Mr. Tomaso?
Yes, discussion. I'm just curious, the way we've worded, particularly the last part, are we saying, like, if someone was lawfully imprisoned, we couldn't restrict their right to keep and bear arms? Or if they were judged, I don't know, completely insane, we would, I'm just wondering if we might have boxed ourselves into a corner if we're saying that, we reject all laws at any level of government. That I do believe even if you're an anarchist, there are some legitimate means where someone, to protect themselves and others, might have their rights. There might actually be legitimate law. So I'm just worried we might be putting ourselves into an unfortunate box by keeping this language as it is.
Well, to address that, Mr. Tomaso, I don't believe that the language here precludes, the due process of law. It simply is referencing laws, or rather statute, laws is the shorthand in this case, that would, arbitrarily restrict such things. Of course, if one has undergone due process of law, that's an entirely different scenario. In fact, I had a conversation. Huh? At any level? Well, yeah. I mean, that's to delineate between local, state, and presumably federal. But of course, we're dealing more so with state and local. Perhaps the language might be slightly broad in that sense. I would not read this as abrogating our support, I guess, for the due process of law for the denial or the stripping of one's rights. If you do, I'm sorry.
Mr. Merced, how are we on time?
We are 8 minutes in, so we got a good amount of time.
Is there further discussion? Yes, Mr. Light?
Stuart Light from Berlin. To assuage Mr. Tomaso's fears, as I see it, a sentence is not a law. Laws cover everyone. Sentencing covers the specific person.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, is there objection to adoption of Platform Amendment 4? I am seeing no objection. Amendment 4 is adopted. Next, and I don't know why these were sent out of order, we have Platform Amendment 18 that deals with the privacy blank.
I can address why they are out of order is because these are grouped by section of the platform that they are amending, not by number. Similar in the way that the House, the way that we operate, and I use the same format, by the way, or a very similar format. We operate by committee work. So a committee will produce a given bill, and then we will operate by going down a list of committees and the bills that they turn out. So Platform Amendment 18 simply strengthens the privacy plank. We added certain clauses in here concerning laws which compel admissions of guilt or cooperation with agents of the state, such as things where in a plea deal a prosecutor may request the cooperation of someone who has been accused of a crime in order to gain evidence on others. We also more specifically put language in to support, Article 19 protections in our state's constitution, which is effectively our state's Fourth Amendment. And yes, we also changed the language in the beginning to be slightly more in line with the fundamental principle that it is natural to have private action in your life, have private information that you hold. So again, I believe this is a non-controversial change, and any objection I would love to hear.
Is there any discussion on Amendment 18? Yes, Bonnie?
I just have a question. Maybe you could explain a little bit why you included why you included passive yet compulsory modifying surveillance legislation instead of just all surveillance legislation.
Well, actually, that was originally in the plank, and I believe this was authored by Neil Connor at the last, or prior to the last convention. We chose to keep it as is. We didn't feel that there was any change necessary there. Effectively, I mean, any surveillance, especially that which is conducted by government, is usually passive surveillance. So they're not, it's general surveillance. They're not really targeting anyone, but of course the previous verbiage in this particular amendment addresses the very specific nature of certain surveillance and certain searches and seizures. So we felt that keeping that as being like a catch-all for other broad forms of state surveillance was reasonable and not necessary to change.
Because the example right afterwards, requiring businesses to report legal activities, that actually seems like active rather than passive requirements.
It is more passive because if it's in law and they're requiring that, they're expecting the business to comply. The only time that the state would presumably take action in such a way would be to actually enforce the law. And there are businesses currently that exist that would simply not report to the state.
By a truly passive one, like when they have the black boxes in all the internet hubs, that's very passive. They're collecting the data themselves here. Anyway.
Yeah, I think the language is trivial. If there's language for an amendment and we could, hash it out like right now, I'd be all ears. Any ideas?
Yeah, I would just strike passive yet compulsory.
Are you moving to strike that entire sentence or just the terms passive yet compulsory?
I move to strike passive yet compulsory.
so that the sentence would read, we oppose surveillance legislation such as laws that require individuals and businesses to report legal activities without evidence of criminal acts.
Yeah, I will.
Second.
So that's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion on the amendment to the proposal? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, raise your yellow card. All opposed? The amendment passes. Is there further discussion or further amendment on proposal 18? Yes, Mr. Lombardo?
For lack of a better term, I find the phrase "due to inherent nature of man to keep secrets" just creepy. I can understand what you're getting at with that, but I believe it should be better worded or struck just for a general feel of the amendment.
I'm sorry that my writing is creepy. I did not intend for that to sound creepy in any way. I simply intended for that to be a statement of truth, because it is true that people in their lives, there's a necessity of keeping certain information secret or privy to only yourself. And while the language might freak you out a little bit, I think that statement of truth is important to keep in it. So.
Brian Chabot from Ashland. Perhaps we could change "of man to keep secrets" to "of man toward privacy." Would that work?
Yeah, sure. To guard his privacy.
Right.
Yeah, right, okay.
I think privacy is a little bit less creepy than to keep secrets, and conveys the same idea.
So what is the proposed wording again, please?
We recognize that due to the inherent nature of man toward personal privacy, a truly free society cannot exist.
Madam Secretary, do you have that wording?
Yep, got it.
So there's been a motion to amend. Is that seconded?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the amendment? Yes, Mr. Olding.
Motion to amend the amendment. Yeah, so Andrew Olding, Nashua. And just to clean up the language that was just spoken, I would change it to just slightly alter what was said. We recognize that due to the inherent nature of man to maintain privacy, a truly free society.
So that's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the amendment to the amendment, signify by raising your yellow card. All opposed? It passes. So we are now on the amended amendment to the proposal. Is there further discussion on the amendment as amended? No further discussion. All in favor of the amendment as amended, please raise your yellow card. All opposed? It passes. Any further discussion on the proposed amendment or the proposal as amended? Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, raise your yellow card. All opposed? It passes. The next proposal is Amendment 18, which is to strike foreign, 16, which is to strike the foreign policy plank. Mr. Finney has the committee report on that.
Good morning, everybody. I apologize for being late, but I'm here.
Yay!
So this is a pretty simple amendment. This just takes out a foreign policy plank because we are a state entity and not a national entity. So I figured it made sense to not have a foreign policy plank in a state platform.
Is there any discussion? Yes, Mr. Boyle.
Nicholas Boyle, Rochester. If the state ever secedes, I think we will need a foreign policy.
Again, we have a separate plank for that, which actually we will be probably amending shortly by adding actually language from the New Hampshire Constitution to it. I think that it is premature for us to have such a plank while that's not even a crime. Yeah, neither a reality nor a likelihood. But of course, we are unique in the fact that this is the, I'll say it, this is the only state party, I believe, other than I think the Texas National Party or whoever they are, that actually includes such language in their party platform as being in favor of an independent state for their state. So I would urge you to still support this despite the fact that, of course, there might be a necessity for such a thing in the future. Again, we should stick to what is currently our reality and work from there.
Ms. Scott and then Mr. Olding.
Bonnie Scott from Plainfield. I agree with striking all of the current language as irrelevant to a state party, but perhaps now or next year we might consider language about National Guard not being used for foreign wars.
Fair enough. Mr. Olding?
Andrew Olding, Nashua. I would just like to point out to Mr. Dyer that just because other states do not have such language, that in itself I don't believe is a good enough excuse to strike this. Just because we don't have, you know, an army that we in the state of New Hampshire are sending off to other places does not mean that we as a party cannot oppose the use of the federal doing all these things. And I think it's perfectly within our scope to stand against the actions of the federal government.
So if I can address that, as someone who does currently serve in a constitutional component of the National Guard in this state, I do agree that we shouldn't be using the Guard for foreign wars, but as a specific platform plank, the language in this is frivolous to me because we're not a national entity. We're talking about a state party platform. If you want to bring about an amendment to include the National Guard, as I did here, then we should entertain the amendment. But if not, then I think that we need to address the current language in the current amendment.
Mr. Olding again.
Then I would like to motion that we postpone discussion on this until after we look at the National Guard amendment that's being recommended.
Is that an order? It's a special order. So I interpret that as a motion to table, which would be in order.
If there's not one already queued up,
But he still has his.
I was under the understanding that Robert had amended. Was that? Did I misinterpret?
No, he's saying that there's other language in a later proposal.
Yes, in another amendment later on.
It talks about
later on today.
National Guard?
Well, no. So, if I may. So later on, I was referencing the state sovereignty plank that we have. So there's currently a state sovereignty plank in our platform, and it contains no language to the effect of a National Guard. That
go there.
Yeah, but it could theoretically go in there.
This could go there.
So
yeah.
the motion to table this until we discuss and vote on that amendment.
I would be hesitant to. I understand your reasoning for a motion to table. I believe a motion to special order it would be more appropriate to later business or other business.
I'll second.
I believe, yeah. Well, it's a procedural.
Point of order.
If my fellow delegates' intention is to move this on the agenda after a specific thing, that's a motion to postpone definitely to a special. He wants to change the agenda, essentially.
So a motion to postpone is on the floor. Is that debatable? The motion to postpone a specific item, is that debatable, Mr. Snyder?
Yes, this is a definite.
Yes, to a specific time.
Yeah. It is debatable according to my cheat sheet.
Yeah. So is there discussion on postponing this?
Only in terms of to the time that you're postponing.
Yeah, after platform 15.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessary to wait on voting down the removal of the foreign policy plank if the National Guard bit could be put under state sovereignty.
Yes, in the back.
Yeah, DeSanta Newmarket.
Just to clarify on this motion, are we postponing to after we discuss the sovereignty and independence, in conjunction with sovereignty and independence, or before?
Until after we've concluded discussion and voting on amendment 15, I believe. Yes. Thank you, sir. That would be my vote.
Yes, we have a good bit left to do, and according to the agenda, we only have about 45 more minutes before we break for lunch. So there's been a motion. Has that been seconded?
Yeah.
Yes, I would say.
It has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? It passes. Next, we have the proposal number 5, which is the one that was mentioned. There's both a majority and a minority. This is to add a property plank.
So I will speak for the majority of the committee. This is the only platform amendment that we were unable to unanimously agree on. The point of contention is actually the second part of this new plank, which deals with intellectual property. And I will read it for the benefit of the body. We reject the notion that individuals or groups may claim ownership of ideas and employ governments to artificially restrict the flow of information. We therefore oppose all laws which allow for the exclusive ownership of or the rights to an idea, including patent laws, and instead favor the use of voluntary non-disclosure agreements. The reasoning for this is essentially to oppose the copyright, well, not the copywriting system, but to oppose, in the raw terms, the ownership of ideas. It is fundamentally impossible to own an idea. For example, the idea of the wheel. If someone had patented the wheel and restricted the proliferation of that technology, I think that would be tremendously destructive to our society. Now, that's a very extreme example of something like that. But for example, in today's world, we have a pharmaceutical industry that controls patents basically indefinitely on certain drugs that really generic versions are sold all around the world. And as much as I respect the rights to physical property, the notion to me that one can own an idea is fundamentally abhorrent. And this is something that libertarians will always debate and bicker about, but I hope that the body will consider both viewpoints and decide accordingly.
So we actually spend quite a bit of time on this issue, and it's one of the rare occasions of a politician that's willing to be wrong. And I'm willing to be wrong on this. My main point of contention was if we are supporting a free capitalist economy, especially in New Hampshire, I would like to have the idea of someone who works as an entrepreneur, an inventor, to be able to say that they have the credit for the product that they invented, would therefore be able to license it out as they see fit. We've seen a lot of problems in the tech industry with Apple and Samsung kind of going back and forth with their copyright infringement, I guess, on each other in some ways. And there doesn't seem to be any way to remedy the issue because either the patent isn't there or the patent is there and it's being violated. So it's certainly a corruptible practice. I don't deny that. But I want to be careful that we're not saying as a body that if we invent a product that it's just free game for everybody in society to take ownership of.
All right, we have a lot of hands for discussion. Let's start with Mr. Paxton.
So just 2 quick points. First of all, this law would have to be backed up with the initiation of violence. So that's certainly an issue. Number 2, a copyright and a patent law restricts my ability to do what I want to with my own personal property. If I own a printing press and paper, and I want to put down the same words that J.R.R. Tolkien put down, then that restricts my ability to use my paper and my printing press the way that I want to. So putting laws like that restricts my ability to do what I want to with my property.
All right, so there are several hands, and I want to go back and forth between people that support the proposal and people that are opposed to the proposal. Who is opposed?
I have a motion.
There's a motion.
I vote. Sorry, I move to divide the question, the proposal. Sorry, consider the two paragraphs separately.
Second.
Motion to divide the question. Does that supersede further discussion?
I would discuss the motion on the table.
If the question is divided, then it's now two new distinct motions. Is how I would interpret it.
Right. My question is, should we vote on whether to divide before we continue discussion?
Yes.
Okay. So discussion on the motion to divide only at this point.
Is that even debatable? I don't think there's a question about how to divide it. I think it's debatable.
So all in favor of dividing the proposal to where each paragraph will be handled separately, please raise your yellow card. All opposed? The motion to divide passes. Discussion on paragraph 1 at this point. There appears to not be any discussion on paragraph 1. All in favor of adopting paragraph 1 of the proposal? All opposed? Paragraph 1 is adopted. Now discussion on paragraph 2. Yes, Ms. Scott.
Bonnie Scott from Plainfield. I propose an amendment to strike claim ownership of ideas. And if I could speak to that.
Yes.
That keeps the gut emotional feeling of that's my idea for entrepreneurs, but retains the rest of the language insisting that we don't want government doing anything about it.
Mr. Dyer?
Okay. I'm curious, how would that read specifically? We reject the notion that individuals or groups may...
May
okay.
employ government, sorry, that.
Yeah, may employ governments to artificially restrict the flow of information. I think, personally for me, it's very important that language in there very clearly states that individuals may not own, may not own
Check the
ideas.
notion that individuals or groups may employ governments to artificially restrict the flow of information, is how that sentence would then read.
Yes.
So rejecting that they may.
If I may suggest an amendment to your amendment, instead of may claim ownership, well, it's not gonna, you're not gonna like it. I would like to keep it in to say may not own ideas. Because I fundamentally believe that it is impossible to own an idea in the sense that we mean when we say owning property. I feel that it's fundamental to the meaning of that paragraph.
The reason I'm suggesting striking this is because ownership has different meanings. It has the legal meaning as in not allowing anybody else to disseminate copies of it versus this was my idea. Yes, it was built on generations of humanity, but this was my original idea, and allowing somebody to claim that when they have proof.
This discussion is out of order. We're waiting on a second to hear if the motion can be debated upon, and you guys are debating upon a motion before we got to the second.
Thank you, Mr. Olding, and I was allowing Mr. Dyer to answer a question, or what I thought was initially a question. There has been a motion. Is it seconded?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion on the amendment to paragraph 2 to strike the words claim ownership of ideas and?
Yes.
Further discussion? Yes, Mr. Spengler?
In favor of this motion is Chip Spengler from Manchester. I do believe that this could be interpreted as saying that we do not even think that individuals can contract with other individuals voluntarily to protect their ideas in a certain way. I could see it being interpreted that way, and I also do think that there's nothing wrong with an individual claiming, that their idea is something they created. I have no problem with that at all, and so I support the amendment.
Is there anyone opposed to the amendment that would like to speak? Mr. Olding?
So ideas are not physical things, and property is come upon by making an improvement to a physical thing or exchanging something else for that physical thing. And an idea is not a physical item.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Mr. Chabot?
Brian Chabot from Nashua. I think due to the debate that we're having here, the platform is something that we adhere to as an entire party. Because we're so divided on this, we probably should not put it in the platform specifically. So I'm going to suggest that we oppose it.
To oppose the amendment or the entire paragraph?
The entire paragraph.
You should be speaking on the amendment.
Yeah, we're discussing the amendment to strike the words claim ownership of ideas and. Is there further discussion? I thought I saw a hand over here. So all in favor of the amendment? Hold on, is there further discussion?
I would like to roll call this, if it is an important issue to me, and I would like to move to roll call.
So
just the amendment?
by roll call, I take it you mean you want an actual counted vote, not you want me to stand here and call off the names of all of the delegates?
Correct.
So there's a request for a counted vote. Remind me, is that debatable? Does that need?
I think it needs a second.
Yeah, I think it needs a second.
I think it's a second. I think that's
State the motion for the amendment.
So the proposal is for a counted vote. Is there objection to a counted vote? Hearing none, there will be a counted vote on the amendment to strike the words claim ownership of ideas and. If I could employ Mr. Demarest and Mr. Sheets to count, all in favor of the amendment to strike the words claim ownership of ideas and, please signify by raising your yellow card.
If I tap you on the shoulder.
Yeah, let's divide the room to where, Mr. Demarest, you get everything to the right of the executive committee. All right, let's have one person do the actual walk-around count. That way there's not confusion about people being double counted. So again, all in favor, please raise your yellow card.
Well, then when you put your card down.
You have one on the executive committee.
11 in favor, all opposed, please raise your yellow card.
Again, when you.
Okay. 22 opposed. Do we have an updated? Okay. That did not pass. So, what's that?
3 minutes.
We have 3 minutes left on discussion. Mr. Lombardo.
Manchester, I support the proposal. I do disagree with Mr. Paxton's comments, though, about copywriting. I think intellectual property should be understood as being different from copyrights. Copyrights are a term of sale, so they're between two consenting parties. If I sell you a document and I claim that as a term of the sale I am retaining the rights to copy that document, it means that you agree. Those are two consenting parties. However, intellectual property is dependent on government decree. It is not consenting parties. It is one party engaging with the government to restrict competition. And claiming that intellectual property is fundamental to a free market is impossible because it cannot exist without government. Therefore, you're saying that government is playing a fundamental role in the economy, and that is not compatible with capitalism. So I support this proposal.
And I thought I saw a hand over here. Mr. Gracie?
Bernie Gracie from Hollis. I admire the intellectual rigor and the referential integrity of the proposal. However, I move to postpone indefinitely the second paragraph.
There's a motion to postpone the second paragraph. Is that seconded?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your yellow card. All opposed? That does not appear to pass. So the proposal before us is to adopt the second paragraph as presented by the platform committee. Any further discussion? I think we have less than a minute. Mr. Jarvis.
James Jarvis, hi. I total opposition to this paragraph included at all. As somebody who's created content in multiple forms of distribution, the ability of other people to economically exploit my ideas at higher efficiency removes my ability to even bother to create content. Are the party supporting the ability of people to retain rights to distribution of their own content? I'm not saying it supports a free market. It corrupts a free market.
Mr. Gracie and then Mr. Dyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say I also don't support this. A purpose of the political party is also to elect people in representation. I think that if we move forward, we are basically saying as a party that we are not supporting entrepreneurs to come in here to create new businesses, and this will be something that will detract from our ability to really defend the key principles of liberty. I support everything that's been in here so far. I think this is actually in the context in a 21st century economy where technology and intellectual property is the fuel for the next century. I believe that we are hurting ourselves. Thank you for your consideration.
Point of information.
Question. Yeah, hold on. Question.
So the ones who are opposed to the overall plank in the platform, or
that question is out of order. There's a point of information.
Yeah, point of information. Nowhere in the proposed bylaws that we're going to be going over is winning elections actually said anywhere. So I think his point about the purpose of what a political party is, while we all may use it for that, the purpose, according to the bylaws that we're going to be proposing, is nominating and supporting candidates for public office. Doesn't say
Thank you for the point of information. We are out of time, so we are moving to a vote on paragraph 2 as presented by the platform committee. All in favor signify by raising your yellow card. All opposed? That is not 2/3. That does not pass. Next we have Amendment 6, which is modification to the theft plank. Mr. Dyer for the committee.
Taxation is theft.
I appreciate, yes. It is taxation theft. Anyhow, concerning this, we actually rewrote the entire taxation plank. We felt that the previous plank was not based off of our statement of principles, or at least not enough. We felt that it was necessary to actually include in our platform that taxation is a coercive, an aggressive and violent practice, and that it is tantamount to theft. And of course, there's not much else that is particularly controversial in this plank. I ask for your support.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Tomaso?
Yes, I have an amendment.
There's an amendment.
Right. Just so we clarify, I'd like to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 line around physical line 7, where it says including income or sales tax. I've changed that to including a wage, salary, income, or sales tax. Because legally, income is not your salary or your wages, which is what people really care about. So I just want to make it clear that we really, if you earn it, you get to keep it.
And can you repeat the wording there, please?
So after the word including, change it to any wage, salary, income, or sales tax. Fair enough.
That's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the amendment, Mr. Olding?
Yeah, Andrew Olding again, Nashua. Motion to amend the amendment. Just strike motion to strike including an income or sales tax as well as the language that was just stated. So that's an amendment.
So that it would read, therefore we oppose any and all new tax burdens?
Yeah, it is my opinion that that's just muddy, and if you try to include every single form of new taxation in there.
Mr. Shields?
Brian Shields from Dover. Considering that...
Point of order. We need a
Point of
second
order.
on this motion.
Is there a second to the amendment? I'm seeing several people waving cards. All right, Mr. Shields, you are now recognized.
Brian Shields from Dover. Considering that platforms are basically the entry point of new people to the party, and that income and sales tax is always a controversial topic in New Hampshire, I say that we should include it.
Is there anyone opposed to the amendment to the amendment? That way we try to keep the debate equal. All right, I mean, anyone in support? Well, whatever the opposite of the thing he said.
Well, Brian Rosen supported the amendment, I believe, to make it clear that we are in fact against an income or sales tax. To the point by Mr. Olding, I believe it's important to include these things because, of course, it is, again, as Brian pointed out, it is very much a state issue here. We are one of few states that has neither an income nor sales tax. Of course, we don't yet have a tax on wages. We do not yet have a tax on salaries. However, there was, of course, a bill that was going through this year to impose a tax on wages, or what was effectively going to be a tax on wages. Luckily, the bill died in the Senate, but I believe it's important for our platform to very specifically preclude these things, because it's very unique in New Hampshire that we do not have these taxes.
Ms. Scott?
Point of information, New Hampshire does have an income tax. It's the interest and dividends tax.
We're in the process of appeal.
Good.
So is there further discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment to the amendment so that the sentence would read, therefore we oppose any and all new tax burdens. All in favor of that amendment, please raise your yellow cards. That does not have anywhere near a 2/3. We do not need the opposed to wind up raising cards. So we are now on the amendment.
That should just be a simple majority until we get to the final vote.
Yes.
That was still nowhere near a majority either. So we're now on the amendment to add reference to salary and wage taxes before the word income. Is there discussion on that proposal? Mr. Rowling again.
I mean, salary and wages is, I believe, covered under income. I know it's not technically under like legal senses, like they maintain that these are different, but like in reality, a payroll tax is an income tax, and all this other anything that's coming out of your paycheck is an income tax.
Mr. Dyer would like to respond.
Yes. So legally, wages and salaries are included in the definition of income presently. Of course, income can come from many different sources. So a tax that is levied independently on one's wages or one's salary is, of course, while it is a tax on income, it will never be called, at least politically, an income tax. They will call it a wage tax, or they will call it a salary tax. So I believe it's important that the language very clearly states that we are against all forms of these taxes, because of course we don't want some candidate or some officer of the party saying, well, I support a wage tax, but I don't support an income tax, which of course they're effectively the same.
Mr. Lombardo.
In opposition, is that okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I do oppose the amendment in agreement with Mr. Shields. The platform, politics is marketing, and the platform is our marketing tool. So we want to avoid making it overly complicated and overly wordy. If we're targeting New Hampshire voters in this instance, we specifically want to call out sales and income tax because, as said, those are the most commonly brought up taxes as when we think about proposed.
Just 1 second, Mr. Olding. We have a non-member that would like to be recognized. Is there any objection to a Libertarian Party national member from Pennsylvania who is in attendance being recognized for 30 seconds?
To do what?
To speak on the amendment.
I
object.
There is an objection. So, therefore, Mr. Cheech, you are not recognized. Mr. Olding?
Motion to amend the amendment again, just to make it clearer and easier to understand, because I do believe if we pass this amendment, it's a few too many things. Therefore, we oppose any and all new tax burdens, including a tax on income or a sales tax. See, a tax on income would then include all these other ones that we're trying to just...
Ms. Scott, you're recognized.
Bonnie Scott from Plainfield. I'm new to the state here, but I was here for the recent tax that just passed, and they kept saying it's not an income tax, it's not an income tax, it's opt-in. Well, it was a wage tax. Or a payroll tax.
Is there a second to the motion from Mr. Olding to amend the amendment?
Oh, I didn't hear.
So there is, I thought I heard a second from this side of the room. Yes, in the back, you're recognized.
Elliot Axelman from Manchester. I would make a motion to amend it to keep it very simple, but also more inclusive.
That is out of order at this point. We currently have an amendment on the floor that needs to be voted on before we have further amendments.
Restate his amendment?
We can't get through these
So the amendment is to have the plank read, therefore we oppose any and all new tax burdens, including a income tax or a sales tax.
No, a tax on income.
A tax on income or a sales tax. Thank you. Is there discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of that amendment to the amendment, raise your yellow card. That does not appear to have the requisite number of votes. There was someone... Point of order.
You need to take the other vote. You can get it with a simple majority. You do not need an absolute majority of the delegates.
All opposed, raise your yellow card. That did not pass. Mr. Axelman wished to make an amendment. You were recognized for that.
Thank you, Elliot Axelman, Manchester. I think
if you could please stand up so that the camera can get a good shot of you.
To keep the wording really simple, I would motion to amend it to the wording being, we oppose any and all new tax burdens, including any tax on income or sales.
That is so close to what was just defeated, I'm going to rule that out of order.
Question for the chair.
Question for the chair.
How much time do you have left on this?
How much time do we have left? 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Any further, Mr. Tomaso?
Move to close debate on this amendment.
Second.
All in favor of closing debate on this amendment? All opposed? That passes very easily. All in favor of the proposed plank that was not amended, or
Still Rich's amendment.
hold on, we're still on an amendment. Okay, thank you. So all in favor of, and Ms. Secretary, can you read off what the current proposal is?
Yes, the new amendment would be, therefore we oppose any and all new tax burdens, including a wage, income, or sales tax.
Wage, salary.
Yeah,
wage, salary, income. Oh, I missed that. Wage, salary, income, or sales tax.
All in favor of the amendment as just read by the Secretary, raise your yellow card. All opposed? The amendment passes. We are now on the plank as amended. Debate has been restricted, so all in favor of the proposal as amended signify by raising your yellow card. All opposed? It passes. We now move to money and currency. I like money. Amendment 7.
Again, speaking for the committee, we felt that the existing plank, while it was all right, we felt that it needed some updating, and especially an unequivocal rejection of central banking or fractional reserve banking. That's why the issuance of debt-based monies is an inherently inflationary and fraudulent practice was included. And we also included a sentence for competition in the market for currencies. We felt that that was important as well, as many people in here use non-state currencies.
Is there discussion? Mr. Chabot.
Brian Chabot from Nashville. I would like to propose an amendment to this.
You're recognized for an amendment?
Where it says, any mutually agreed upon commodity or item as currency, I would like to amend that to read, any mutually agreed upon commodity, service, or item as currency.
That's been moved and seconded. Mr. O'Donnell, you're recognized.
No. As currency.
Oh, okay. Is there discussion on the proposal, or rather the amendment to the proposal?
Can I get it, resubmitted again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so after the word commodity, if you go down to the fourth line of the proposal, after the word commodity, comma, service.
Commodity, comma, service, comma, or item.
There we go. Got it.
Mr. Lombardo.
In opposition to this amendment, I believe a service is a value that is created and consumed at the same time. Therefore, is not necessarily something that can be used as currency. I believe the having a service as a debt, saying that someone owes a service to someone, it should be worded differently if that's what's being referred to here. So I would oppose this amendment.
Mr. Dyer, then Mr. Chabot.
For similar reasons, I concur with the delegate from Manchester. I believe that it's inappropriate to add service where you suggest. I think that there might be a reason to add it elsewhere, but services by their nature, while they might be exchanged for other goods, services, or otherwise, I don't believe that they would fit the definition of currency in that very strict sense, that currencies are typically something that which are a store of value or used to store economic energy, and services are an expression, an actual consumption of economic energy. So I believe it's inappropriate to include it in what we would define currency as.
Mr. Chabot, I'll come to you momentarily. You've already spoken once. Mr. Olding?
So in order to fulfill Mr. Lombardo's concerns about this, I would like to make an amendment to the amendment to just change the word currency as, shit, I have the wording in my head. Hang on. Item as a means of exchange.
So the motion, or rather the amendment to the amendment is proposed to have as currency to be worded as a means of exchange?
Yes.
Is that seconded? Seconded by Mr. Dyer. Is there discussion on the amendment to the amendment?
If I may, in favor.
Very briefly.
I will support this because if we are going to amend this, it's very important that we don't include what Mr. Chabot is suggesting in the definition of currency, but if it is means of exchange, that is a sufficiently broad enough term to include services. So I believe that that's a good amendment on behalf of Mr. Olding to accommodate the amendment of Mr. Chabot. Otherwise, I would have voted against it.
Point of information.
Point of information.
Can we get the text?
Yes.
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 individuals and businesses engaged in commerce ought to be free to use and accept any mutually agreed upon commodity, service, or item as a means of exchange.
Further discussion?
Yes, Zachary Dumont from Newmarket. If this were to be adopted, would we then have to consider changing the name of the point, which is 2.3 money and currency?
Simple yes or no?
No, we would not need to change that.
It's addressed either.
Yeah.
Further discussion on the amendment to the amendment? All in favor of the amendment to the amendment signify by raising your yellow card. All opposed? It passes. Is there further discussion on the, or wait, hold on, now we need to adopt the amended amendment.
Yes.
Is there further discussion on the amended amendment? Mr. Chabot.
As amended, I think this actually goes completely with what I was amending in the first place, so I'm going to recommend that people vote yes on this one.
Further discussion?
Just a quick point.
Point of information.
As Gilletta read it earlier, it did have the service word in there still, and I believe now we're removing that.
No, we were adding the word service
Okay.
and changing the word currency to a means of exchange.
Understood. Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the amendment? All opposed? It passes. Now on to the plank as amended. Is there discussion, Mr. Olding?
Okay, so motion to edit the title of this section, since we just added exchange to this, to make it money, exchange, and currency.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Dyer, would you like to speak for the committee?
Yeah. While I do not believe it's necessary, yeah, sure, why not?
Further discussion? All in favor of amending the title to, what was the amended title, please?
Money, exchange, and currency.
All in favor of amending the title to money, exchange, and currency? All opposed? It passes. We now go to the proposal as amended twice. Is there further discussion? And before that, Mr. Merced, how are we on time?
Oh, we're at 7 minutes, so we still got a good 8 minutes left.
And we have 11 minutes until we break for lunch. So this is probably going to be the last plank that we get to before lunch unless we rush through something. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your yellow card. All opposed? It passes. Gentlemen, do you think we can go through this next plank in less than 10 minutes?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Diaz has platform amendment 9.
This is a new platform plank. We thought it was a little odd that education was not included in the platform beforehand, as it is quite a hot topic issue in the state of New Hampshire. So I will read it as it is. Education is a matter of conscious values and free expression as much as assembly, press, religion, or speech. Accordingly, we advocate the complete separation of education and state, ending government ownership, operation, regulation, and subsidy of schools, colleges, and universities. By separating education and the state, educational institutions will be able to compete in an open market. Until that time, any government funds allocated for education should be put entirely under parental and student control for use in schools of choice, including but not limited to private, church schools, and or to carry forward for education in a future year.
Mr. Finney.
Thank you. Brandon Finney from Rochester. If we could just, as the cleanup to the language, just remove the word put from put entirely. It just reads weird when you say put entirely. Should just be, entirely under parental and student control. Second.
You're making a motion, say that I move that.
Yes. Okay, I move that everything I just said.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, raise your yellow card. All opposed? It passes. I believe the secretary is having
I'm having a hard time
A hard
finding
time
this,
finding
even though
the
it already
wording.
passed.
Me
So the.
It sounded like he was asking for the removal of
Of the
the
word.
Until that time, any
It's in
government
final,
funds
but
allocated
not
for
in
education
as
should be.
Oh, it's
entirely-
not in the as amended section.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Oh,
Sorry,
what?
it wasn't,
It wasn't in the as
it wasn't
amended.
in the as the amended.
It's in the final, that's why.
really weird.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
There was a typo in the.
There's a typo in there.
There was a typo.
It's probably.
We figured it out. So the amendment passes. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, we are now voting on the plank as amended. All in favor, raise your yellow card. Opposed? It passes. Is there a plank that you think we can go through fairly quickly? I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4,
We'll just keep going in
We
order.
have to go in order.
Yeah, you have to go through. an order.
Okay. So next we have Amendment 10, which is monopoly and oligopoly. Mr. Nass?
Okay, so this plank regards monopoly and oligopoly and the free market directly. I'll read it here real quick for you.
Don't read. No, don't
Okay, you can
read
read
the
it.
report.
So basically, we just feel that we needed a plank in our platform about the free market and our opposition to the privileges that the government grants to certain companies to give them monopolies and such.
Is there discussion? You're recognized.
Brandon Lombardo from Salem. I would just like to state that a monopoly can exist in a functional free market if a service is being provided in an adequate manner and no competition arises, and that this amendment is factually incorrect.
Do you have a proposal, or you're just speaking against?
I'm speaking against the amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Dyer?
If I may, yeah. I don't believe you're correct. I understand that, yes, it is possible for a single provider of a service or good to exist in a market without competition that's arisen. I would disagree that that is a monopoly. I don't believe that that qualifies. I believe a monopoly is very specifically an entity, not that controls 100% of market share in a given market, but an entity that which excludes competition or precludes competition. And hence why I felt it very appropriate to include this in the platform.
Further discussion? Mr. Tomaso?
Yeah, I have grammatical amendments. In the last sentence, the word which should be that. So all laws that enable such collusion.
Oh, yes. There's an amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion on the amendment to change which to that. All in favor of the amendment? All opposed? The amendment passes. Further discussion now on the plank as amended. Mr. Oling.
Speaking in favor, adding to Caleb's point, there's really only been one entity that's been described as a monopoly by any government that wasn't created by the government, and that was Standard Oil back when they had 84% of the oil holdings in the world. And they put together a lawsuit to go against Standard Oil, and before it even got to court, the free market itself had worked its own means to get them under 25% of the share. So even when monopolies do come up, they don't last. Now, and I think I probably just used the word monopoly wrong at the end there, but even when, controlling factors come up and gain the majority of market share, the market has ways to combat that. So
further discussion?
Monopolies are not possible.
Shouldn't we really be against a compelled monopoly instead of one that arises by circumstance?
So is that a motion to add a word?
Yeah, basically how I'm not sure exactly how to phrase that in complete legalese, but I would suppose both compelled state and corporate monopolies, yada yada.
State and corporate monopolies would be compelled. I think that, are we not talking about the economic, the sentence before that? Is that not?
Oh, I'm not sure the best way to phrase that in. That's why. I have to admit, exactly.
That is not a motion. Ms. Scott, you were recognized.
I move to table this one and move on to the next one. I believe it needs more work than we can do here right now. There are natural monopolies that do develop.
Second. There's a motion to table that has been seconded. All in favor of tabling? All opposed? The motion does not pass. Is there further discussion? Mr. Dias.
Motion to move to the previous question.
Motion to move to the previous question. All in favor of the previous question, signify by raising your yellow card.
What's the previous question?
Let's stop talking and raise yellow cards if you want to stop the talking. Opposed? Motion passes. Madam Secretary, can you remind me, has this been amended?
No, it is not.
It has not. All in favor of the plank as presented by the platform committee, raise your yellow card.
Information it has.
Yes, that's right.
Yes,
oh, yes, sorry,
links to that. Thank you, Mr. Light. Yes, so the plank as amended, raise your yellow card. All opposed? It passes. We are at 11:43. We are scheduled to take a break at 11:45. The chair is ruling that we are not moving on to another platform proposal at this time. This will be taken up unless there is objection during new business. So I hear no objection to moving the remainder of platform committee to new business. So we are adjourned until after lunch.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.